YouTube! Hello! Tired today, really tired. I was working from 9 o'clock yesterday to 11:30 at night, so I'm a bit knackered. Not inclined to do anything today, apart from perhaps make YouTube videos. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to talk about. I've got so much to talk about. I want to do some discussion videos, because I haven't done any of those for a very long time, have I? But I need to feel inclined to do them. That's the thing. I need to have that mojo going on. I don't know what the fuck that was about. I need to have that spark of inspiration for them to work, otherwise they don't. So I'm just going to talk and see what comes out. Oh, incidentally, I've been getting into something new of late. Sort of an alternative to the Transformers collecting. Yes. Transformers, they have their lulls, you know, between lines. And at the moment there's a pervasiveness of a particular line, which is the Dark of the Wank, or Bark at the Moon, or whatever that awful movie. There's the movie-based toys are pervasive at the moment, and you know, I know a lot of people like them, and that's your business. I don't. I really hate them. I can't be arsed with them at all, because I can't get into the mythology, you see. That's the thing. I need mythology. I need narrative. I need something to get me drawn in, and I can't stand the movie universe. I cannot stand it. It's stupid, it's poorly constructed, it's ham-fisted. It's an excuse to get lots of robots together, hitting one another, unconvincingly and blurrily and very indistinctly. That's basically it, so I can't be arsed with the movie line at all. So I'm kind of in a lull with regards to the robots in disguise, because I've got a lot of stuff. It's difficult to find things that I want at the moment. There's a little bit of smiz now again, Dave, is there not? I can't stop it now. It's infectious. It's like come through the screen at me. So I've been indulging in other toy lines. When I was a kid, a little bit of background. When I was a kid, I always liked those cartoons and toy lines that involved magic and dragons and demons and occultism and things. I particularly like there was a tendency in the 1980s for bad guys in cartoons to be magic, to have some sort of occult quality to them. You had Mum-Ra in Thundercats. You had various others. Bad guys tended to be either magicians or scientists, and either way I really love it. I particularly like big dark fantasy mythologies that you got in the likes of Thundercats, and in one other particular line too. That's the Masters of the Universe, He-Man. I never liked the original cartoon when I was a kid. I didn't like it for a number of reasons, but primarily it's because I hated what it did with the bad guys. I hated the fact that the bad guys were stupid and were dicks and they weren't really threats, they were nuisances. Despite all of this incredible power Skeletor obviously had. Skeletor could do anything with his magic. He did things in the show that made you think, well, why didn't you just click your fingers and make He-Man burst into flames, or just dissolve into ash, or turn into a big giant Muppet or something like that? Because he could do it. He did it all the time. He like transmuted base materials into living creatures, big rock giants and lava giants and ice giants and snakes made out of fire and shit like that. He would do it all the time, and yet he was continuously defeated because he was a dick. He was an idiot. Now, the backgrounds and the bios on the toys painted a completely different mythology. There was actually something slightly more interesting going on in the sort of unofficial biographies, or the biographies and the universe that was kind of changed or ignored by the cartoon. Skeletor was a much more interesting character. For one thing, he was possessed. He was an extra-dimensional entity, apparently, that was possessed by another entity, a demonic creature, which turned him into Skeletor. There was also this suggestion in the background that he was a being called Keldor originally, who was from Eternia, but who was lost in some sort of extra-dimensional space because of his occult experiments, because he was an occultist and a magician, and it was there that he encountered creatures who gave him the abilities and turned him into Skeletor. There was also a subtle suggestion that he was King Randor's brother, or half brother, which is kind of fun. That's kind of interesting, because that means that King Randor is the king of Eternia and the father of Prince Adam, who became He-Man, by the way. So that means that Skeletor is He-Man's uncle. So it goes all Star Wars on your ass, which is kind of cool. I like that. I find that really interesting, and it's a trend that's continued into the modern toy lines, like Transformers. Not quite as big, not quite as significantly. He-Man has survived into the modern day. There was a re-release of the line in 2002, I believe, which had a really good cartoon and beautiful, beautiful toys. I've only just started collecting them because it sort of passed me by. I didn't even know it existed until I saw a stray episode on Cartoon Network or whatever. I certainly didn't know that there was a toy line involved. Otherwise, I would have collected them at the time, because I'm only really interested in the bad guys. As per usual, the bad guys are so much more interesting than the good guys. There are one or two. I like the sillier good guys. I like the silliness of the Masters of the Universe line. Full stop. I love the silly names. I love the silly powers. I love the fact that Eternia, the sort of fantasy world in which it occurs, it's very much like Third Earth from Thundercats. It doesn't seem to have any definition. You have this wonderful mixture of science fiction and arcane occultism, magic, fantasy, all of this stuff all rammed together, and it just works. I mean, Eternia is a world where magic is just sort of par for the course. There are magics, there are demigods, there are demons, there are spirits, there are dragons, and all sorts of things like that. And all of the magic is distinct and interesting. For example, the magic wielded by Skeletor is very different to the magic wielded by the Sorceress or by King Hiss or Evil Lyn or whatever. It's all distinct and characterful, and I like that. I find that really cool. I particularly like the complete absurdity of the whole thing. It appeals to me massively, and the fact that there's such intricacy that has developed and accrued around the mythology as the years have gone by, and as the fans of the show and of the comics and of the toys have grown up, they've carried these seeds of mythology along with them and have created something quite cool, quite interesting. It has the same appeal for me as Conan. You know, the original Conan films with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and the Robert E. Howard books as well. I'm not a fan of the books, it's a bit too sort of high fantasy sword and sorcery for my tastes. But I love it. I love the original movies of Conan because they're so camp, they're so silly, and yet they have this incredible joie de vivre. You know, they carry you along, and they're so much fun because they are so absurd. I have exactly the same thing with He-Man. I mean, even the name is so utterly ridiculous and sort of Saturday morning cartoon boys club, no girls allowed kind of thing. He-Man, it's so cool. It's so silly. I love it, and I particularly like the magic, the occultism, the demons. And I like especially the villains. There are some great villains in He-Man. Skeletor. Skeletor is awesome. Everybody knows Skeletor. Even people who weren't alive in the 1980s know of Skeletor because he's one of those images, those figures who has entered into popular culture. So it's now used as slang for various things, usually as an insult. I mean, Fred Phelps looks very much like Skeletor, don't you think? But I love him. I hate the version of him in the Filmation cartoons, the sort of He-Man type. Oh, I hate him because he's such a dick. He's such a twat. He's so stupid. But the mythology of the character implies something much bigger. This sort of ultra powerful arcane occultist who's come back from some hidden past of Eternia to wreak havoc upon it. Love it, and the image of him is so demonic. It's so interesting. In fact, let me grab for you one of the toys I recently purchased. This wonderful figure is Skeletor as he appears in the 2002 toy line. And what I love about it is they've taken the original image of Skeletor, the slightly dumpy, awkward, cartoonish looking figure from the 1980s, and they have just gone to town with it. They've made it so incredibly detailed and demonic and occult looking. All over his clothes and his armour there are occult symbols. They're the kind that you will find on temples and carvings in books of occultism, of genuine occultism. He has that wonderful ram's head staff which is so satanic. I love it. Absolutely beautiful. And his face is very, very cool. This figure's face is beautiful. He looks evil. He looks like he's scarred, like he's damaged, like he really is the uber lord of destruction. Love it. He also has this wonderful thing. This is kind of like a reference to the original He-Man toy line. In the original toy line, He-Man's sword and Skeletor's sword could join together. Originally, in the mythology that was created around the toys, they were both going to have equal halves of the power sword, which gave them their powers. It was never carried through. This sword that comes with Skeletor actually does split in two, so you have a light side which has all of this sun and star symbolism on it, and you have a dark side which has all of this sort of death and skull-like imagery on it. Love it. Apparently in the 2002 toy line, what they were originally going to do was that the storyline had moved on, so that Skeletor now had both halves of the power sword, so he's even more powerful and even more nefarious and unpleasant. And the whole thing was going to be about He-Man trying to either shatter the power swords or reclaim them and restore balance to Eternia. They really should have followed that through in the cartoon. They really should have. That's a great storyline, but they didn't. I mean, I will say the cartoon from 2002 of He-Man is really good. It's silly and it's over the top. It's so much like the original Filmation cartoon, but it actually has a story. It has a mythology. It has all of these wonderful elements that it weaves into the storyline. For example, Skeletor in that show, actually, it's the first time you actually see what he used to look like before his face was burnt off. One of the earliest scenes in which Skeletor appears is a flashback in which he is fighting with King Randor, who was then Captain Randor or something like that, because he was trying to conquer Eternia again at that point. And he actually has a face and he has hair, and he's this character called Keldor, and he's really sexy. He's really good looking. But he throws like a vial of acid or something at Randor. Randor knocks it back, it smashes him in the face, and Skeletor stumbles away with his face falling off, which is really lovely. And he's then carried away by Evil Lyn, who is sort of like in love with him at that point. And they take him to the temple of this character called Hordak. Anybody who used to watch He-Man or She-Ra, particularly in the 1980s, will know who Hordak is. Hordak was the main villain from the She-Ra cartoon. He was a twat as well. He was very stupid, very cartoonish, very sort of incompetent. In this show, Hordak is he's like the devil. He is this ancient mythological evil who's been sealed away from Eternia forever. And Skeletor as Keldor was almost like his acolyte. He learned all of his occultism and his mastery of the arcane arts from Hordak. And he sort of prays to Hordak to save him. As he's there dying. You actually see bits of his face coming off. It's great for a cartoon. That is wonderful. And Hordak tells him, yeah, I'll save you alright, but there'll be a price. And Keldor says, yeah, fine, whatever, save me. And he's transformed into Skeletor. Apparently what happens is Keldor is bound up with this extra-dimensional demon, which turns him into Skeletor and also drives him completely mad. It's a great back mythology. It's really, really cool. And apparently if it didn't carry on into a third season, which is a real shame, because it was really building up momentum towards the end of the second season. If it carried on, you'd have had Hordak coming back, apparently, taking over all of Eternia. Then you'd have Skeletor and He-Man fighting against him. By all accounts, the final scenes were going to have Skeletor and Hordak kicking the shit out of one another, and Skeletor winning. Skeletor actually saving all of Eternia. Incidentally, of course, not by intention, by kicking his former mentor's ass. I love it. I absolutely love that stuff. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful to see this kind of magic occultism in a children's show. I'm really fond of that, because I used to love it when I was a kid. It used to drive my imagination wild. It's certainly the kind of thing that you find in my fiction now. Which you can buy, incidentally, from Dark Moon Press. There's a couple of magazines that have my short stories in them at the moment. Maybe something a little more later, who knows. But if you just go to Google, type in Dark Moon Press, you'll find some of my stuff. Dark Moon Digest, rather. Dark Moon Digest, that's what you want. I used to drive my imagination wild as a kid. Much as I love like Megatron and the Decepticons and the Predacons, and I do, I love them. Absolutely love them. If you give me something that involves magic and demons and fantasism, I'm there. I absolutely adore it. And I like dark magic. I like evil magic because it's just so much more interesting, isn't it, than the sort of goody two-shoes stuff that's wielded by He-Man and the Sorceress. I love Skeletor, and these toys have really captured my imagination at the moment. I'm very enthusiastic about them. I've got a couple of them. I've bought a couple of the 2002 line. I've got Hordak from the Classics line, which is just... I can't tell you. If you're into action figures or toys, it's just beautiful. I'm getting everything from the Classics range as and when I can. Everything. I'm very enthusiastic about this. So that's one of the things that's going on at the present. I'm really enjoying that.